We shall talk today about that elusive creature, the avoidant, and how one can decipher the hidden, delicate signals that they, at last, might be missing you. Yes, we shall unravel their carefully guarded secrets, piece by piece, story by story, so that you, with the patience of a saint and the curiosity of an adventurer, may learn to see the subtle signs that these shy souls display when they long for your presence. Allow me to begin with a little reflection, a memory I carry with me as though it were inscribed upon a pocket watch, ticking away relentlessly in the chambers of my mind. Years ago, I encountered an old acquaintance who possessed the spirit of an elusive fox, always slipping away at the precise moment one wished to speak to him, forever ducking from the crowd, weaving in and out of gatherings with an almost preternatural sense of evasion. Ah, he was charming in his own way, mind you, but it was as though any flicker of genuine connection made him tremble. He lived for his autonomy, for the safety of his isolation, and for those sweet moments of solitude that fed his cautious heart. Yet, behind that shield of stoicism, there lay an undercurrent of longing, a secret desire for connection. But how does one detect such a phenomenon in an avoidant individual? It is not so straightforward, I must say. The avoidant, you see, is something of a paradox, wanting closeness yet pushing it away, desiring companionship yet constructing fortress walls about themselves. So let us step carefully and proceed through the labyrinth, enumerating the signs they might exhibit when they begin to miss you, when the fortress gates creep open just a hair, and they contemplate letting you in once more. In these next minutes, I will share with you some of these behaviors in detail, carefully disguised but brilliantly telling, and perhaps, by the end, you will come to understand not only the avoidance method of communication, but also the gentle dance that their longing can inspire. Let us begin at what I'd call the threshold of invitation, the surprising text message, or perhaps a brief email for the more traditional among us. One might wait for the crowing of the rooster before such an epistle arrives, for avoidants rarely announce themselves with gusto. Instead, they appear silently and unexpectedly, like a cat stepping across a windowsill. I recall receiving such a message many moons ago from my elusive friend. Merely a line or two, nothing grand. It read, "Hello, it's been a while. Hope you're well." Now you might raise a brow at the simplicity of it, but such minimalism is precisely the point. An avoidant does not fling open the door with joyous exclamations. They knock quietly, tentatively, testing the waters. So if you see this subtle sign, know it is their version of an outstretched hand. They may not say, "I miss you." They may not say, "I would like to see you." But that terse "hello" can speak volumes in their carefully guarded language. Look for timing, dear viewer. Do they contact you at peculiar hours when they believe you might not respond immediately? Do they wait till the hush of late evening or the hush-hush hours of early dawn? Avoidants often prefer times that allow them to control the pace of the interaction. This is how they test the waters, how they reach out when they can swiftly retreat should they feel exposed. In essence, they dip a toe into the lake and pull it back if the water's too cold. If you see them stepping forward in this understated manner, take heed. There is longing behind that cautious greeting. Next, consider their presence in the digital world. Have you noticed them lurking, so to speak, around your social media posts? Perhaps it's a like here, a brief comment there. Never too much, never as effusive as a flamboyant peacock, but enough for you to sense a gentle nudge. If you haven't heard from them in weeks or months, yet suddenly they pop up to give a half-smiling emoji to your new photograph, take it as a sign. In my own experience, I once posted a photograph of a particular journey I took, an ancient ruin in some far corner of the world. I was taken aback when the very same avoidant friend, who had vanished from my life without a trace, liked that photograph. A gesture so subtle as a click of a button, yes, but oh, how it carried significance. To me, it said, "I'm still here, on the periphery." observing. I remember you, and there is a part of me that cannot resist acknowledging your presence. This is how the avoidant waves from behind the curtains of the stage. They rarely take center spotlight, but they will occasionally give you a fleeting sign that they're in the audience, still watching, still aware. Let us step away from the digital realm and venture into the realm of personal encounters. Perhaps your avoidant is someone you occasionally see in a shared space, an office, a cafe, a local bookshop. When the silence grows too deafening for them, you may notice little cracks in their aloof facade. It might be the extended glance. They look at you for a moment longer than expected, as if searching for something. Or they might attempt small talk in an environment where previously they would have scurried away. The key here is subtlety. For an avoidant, eye contact can be unnerving, yet if they are beginning to miss you, you may catch them gazing at you a fraction of a second too long. They might ask a simple question, "How's your latest project going?" Or, "Have you tried that new coffee?" When before, they would mumble a brief greeting and then vanish. You see, the avoidant is like a star in a distant constellation. You catch a faint twinkle, but if you stare too hard, it disappears into the velvet of the night sky. So yes, if you notice them lingering in your presence, if they show an unexpected curiosity about your affairs, know that within them is a silent yearning they can no longer quell. One of the more striking ways an avoidance missing you may manifest is through genuine concern. Now, an avoidant might not kneel before you with Shakespearean declarations. "Oh, how I do worry for your welfare, my dear friend." Nay, that would be far too conspicuous. Instead, they might slip a gentle inquiry into the conversation. Something like, "You mentioned you weren't feeling well last week. Everything all right now?" Or, "How did that difficult meeting go? The one you were anxious about?" I encountered just such a moment years past. My elusive friend, let's call him Mr. A, knew I was grappling with a personal dilemma. Being who he was, I never expected a follow-up. To my amazement one evening, out of the blue, he sent a quick message purely to ask, "Did it go okay?" No frills, no overblown sympathy, but in that short inquiry I felt a stirring of sincere care. At that moment I realized, when the avoidant cares to see if you're all right, it speaks to a deeper well of affection that they can no longer mask completely. That is their version of an embrace from afar. Now and then, an avoidant may orchestrate what we might call a coincidental meeting, though in truth it is anything but coincidental. They may suddenly appear at your favorite cafe at precisely the hour they know you favor, or perhaps they'll conveniently be in the same aisle of the bookstore you frequent. They'll pretend it's all happenstance. "Oh, fancy meeting you here." But observe carefully. If it occurs repeatedly, chance dwindles, and a clear pattern emerges. Moreover, when they musters enough courage to break the silence, they might extend a delicate invitation, couched in disclaimers. Something like, "I was thinking of seeing that new exhibition, if you're not too busy." Notice how an avoidant might craft that invitation in a way that leaves you plenty of room to decline. They do not want to come across as pressing or desperate. Yet, to the discerning eye, that invitation is an unmistakable sign that they feel your absence and long to share a little corner of life with you once again. I recall a friend, an avoidant to the core, who once accidentally showed up at the same art gallery where I had told him I'd be volunteering. He insisted he was simply passing by, that the timing was perfect for his errands. But I knew better. He hated crowds and rarely ventured into cultural events. That subtle subterfuge was as telling as if he had shouted from the gallery entrance, "I miss you, old friend." So learn to read between the lines. The avoidant can be cunning at times, especially when uncertain of your response. They may therefore confide in mutual friends. In these hush-hush dialogues, they reveal little glimpses of their longing without directly telling you. Perhaps you'll hear from a third party that your avoidant friend asked about you. He was wondering if you're seeing anyone, or she was curious to know if you're still living in the same neighborhood. Imagine it as a stealthy reconnaissance mission. The avoidant wants the information, but is reluctant to come to you directly for fear of being too exposed. This phenomenon often precedes a direct contact. Like a scout climbing a hill to survey the lay of the land, they gather intelligence through mutual friends, deciding whether or not it's safe to venture forth. By the time they do approach you, they have carefully prepared themselves, armed with knowledge to reduce the risk of an awkward exchange. In certain instances, an avoidant will break their silence not through direct statements of longing, but through nostalgic reflection. Remember that time we got lost in that old part of town, searching for that elusive pastry shop? They might say out of the blue. They pull a thread from your shared history to see if you're still willing to weave it with them. Why nostalgia, you might wonder? Because it's one of the safest forms of vulnerability. They don't have to say, "I need you right now." Instead, they can reminisce about a happy memory, thereby expressing a desire for connection without truly admitting it. They are testing the waters, seeing if that memory still means something to you, hoping it might serve as a bridge to renew the bond. Take note, dear listener, if an avoidant resurrects the ghosts of your shared past, that indeed is a sign they miss you. They are rummaging through the attic of memory, dusting off old treasure, wondering if you might like to reclaim it with them. Allow me to mention something that may be more elusive to detect, a shift in their overall demeanor around you. Where once they may have been curt or distant, you may notice them relaxing, just a fraction, mind you, in your presence. Perhaps they linger in conversation a bit longer, or they actually respond to your jokes with a mild chuckle. Maybe they even find small opportunities for physical closeness, standing just a shade nearer than before, lightly brushing your arm during conversation. These small signs might seem insignificant to the untrained eye, but to the watchful soul, they can herald the thawing of an avoidant's inner winter. It's like the first green bud appearing on the branch in early spring, a promise that something warmer might follow. If you see these small changes, handle them gently. It's easy to scare off an avoidant if one rushes in too boldly. This next sign can be quite revelatory, though it does not always manifest. The avoidant taking responsibility for past actions or misunderstandings. Now, it's true that many individuals, avoidants included, find it difficult to apologize or own up to mistakes. But if an avoidant has been turning over in their mind the potential reasons why you might not be interacting as before, they may have come to the conclusion that they bear some responsibility. You might receive a quiet apology, something like, "I'm sorry if I seemed distant before, things were complicated," or "I regret how our last conversation ended." In that moment, pay attention to the humility in their tone. Their words, carefully chosen, might indicate they've spent a great deal of time deliberating whether it's worth exposing themselves by admitting fault. If they take this leap, it is indeed a strong sign they've realized how much they miss your presence and how valuable your connection truly is. Finally, we arrive at the grandest sign of all, when an avoidant steps out from behind their fortress walls and says, in effect, "Let's talk." Now, they may not use those exact words. They might merely begin to share deeper things about themselves, cracks in the armor that reveal glimpses of their vulnerability. They might ask you about your innermost thoughts, your plans for the future, or your reflections on life's dilemmas. This openness is a precious gift. It is as though they are inviting you into the courtyard of their castle, though the gate may still remain half shut. But even a half-shut gate is progress for the avoidant, who typically fortifies themselves with all sorts of battlements and moats. If, in your interactions, you detect that their questions and statements have taken on a more introspective, thoughtful nature, if they are finally letting you see who they are beneath the stoic facade, then you can be certain they've spent many a lonely hour recognizing how much they miss your company. Now, dear friends, having laid out these signs, let us reflect upon the very essence of longing in the avoidant spirit. Longing is not a straightforward business for them. It is laced with fear and hope, with memories of past hurts and dreams of future possibilities. Often, the avoidant has learned through life experiences that closeness can be precarious, that trusting another can lead to vulnerability, which in turn can usher in heartbreak or disappointment. So they build their walls, not out of malice, but out of a desire to protect the fragile treasure of their inner self. Yet, as with any human being, the fundamental need for connection cannot remain dormant forever. Their hearts stir, memories of you, of shared laughter, shared adventures, and yes, sometimes even shared tears, begin to haunt them softly. They yearn to break the silence, but the question is always, is it safe to do so? Will I be met with warmth or rejection? Will I find compassion or be turned away? And so, they tread lightly. Let me offer one more anecdote, if I may. Many years ago, I knew a gentleman, grey at the temples, eyes like steel, a voice that seldom rose above a quiet rumble. He lived alone in a sprawling house with high walls, and rarely did he allow anyone beyond the threshold. Over time, we formed a cautious rapport, shared a few evenings discussing literature, music, and the quiet grace of a twilight sky. Then, abruptly, he withdrew. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months without a word. One night, during a fierce winter storm, I heard a knock at my door. There he stood, soaked to the bone, holding a small book in his hands. "I was reading this," he said, not meeting my eye, "and it made me think of you. I'm sorry for disappearing." He offered me that old volume of poetry as though it were a peace offering from a kingdom long at war. In that moment, I understood. He had wrestled with his longing, weighed the risks, and decided he missed our conversations enough to brave the storm and the potential embarrassment of showing up unannounced. That night, we shared a pot of tea and talked until dawn. He spoke of how solitude was both his safe haven and his prison, how missing someone was equal parts exhilarating and terrifying. It was a moment of profound vulnerability, and I realized that was how an avoidant truly breaks the silence. In their own way, cautious, understated, and yet deeply meaningful. You might be wondering, all right, so what do I do if I notice these signs? How do I respond? First, do so gently. Try not to fling the door open so wide that they feel an onrush of emotional intensity. It might startle them back into retreat. Instead, be warm, welcoming, but measured. Let them know you appreciate their effort. Offer a little reassurance that you value their presence. In time, this gentle reciprocity may help them lower their defenses further. Above all, practice empathy. Recognize that an avoidant's guardedness often springs from pain or fear rather than indifference. Remember that longing is universal, even if it manifests differently in each of us. If you meet their subtle signs of interest with understanding, you may find that the relationship has room to grow, and that the deeper layers of who they are might gradually come into view. As we draw near the conclusion of this monologue, let us meditate upon the complexities of the avoidant heart. It is a realm of shifting shadows and half-lit corridors, one in which longing wears a cloak of caution, stepping gingerly so as not to disturb the delicate balance of emotional safety. But oh, how poignant it is when those footsteps echo toward you, when the hush of silence is gently pierced by the quiet ring of a phone call, the brief notes of a text, or the shy question in a public space. These are the signs, dear listener, that the fortress is not as impenetrable as it may seem. There is a door, hidden perhaps, but not sealed forever. It is a door that leads to connection, to companionship, to the timeless ritual of two souls finding solace in one another. And so, heed these signs, watch closely for the subtle gestures, the cautious invitations, the soft confessions. When the avoidant misses you, they don't wave flags from the tower. They leave breadcrumbs along the forest path, hoping you might notice and understand. If you do, and if you follow with compassion, You might just find yourself invited into their sanctuary, albeit slowly, step by step. Yes, dear friends, there is power in silence, but there is also profound power in the first timid moments when that silence begins to crack. When an avoidant breaks that barrier, it can herald the start of a deeper, richer connection, one built upon respect for their boundaries and appreciation for their hidden depths. Take heart, then, if you find yourself on this journey. The path may be winding, the signs subtle, but if the avoidant is reaching out, know that behind their careful demeanor stirs a genuine desire to reconnect. If you answer that call with patience, empathy, and gentle reassurance, you may discover that even the most guarded soul can open itself to love, friendship, and the delight of shared experience. In the end, if I might say so with a touch of Hopkinsian sentiment, life is replete with complexities and wonders. One of those wonders is the quiet transformation of a solitary figure into a companion, all because they dared to miss you, and you dared to hear them. May we all be so brave, and may we find in the hush of silence the faint but unmistakable calling of a heart that longs for ours in return.
If you believe this video might help someone dear to you, share it with them. A small gesture on your part could mean the world to a friend in need.